Today, I will be talking about every single release of Pac-Man. From every console that had it to every individual version if a console has more than one. Now, of course, I think we should get ourselves familiar with the game first. And with that being said, this should also be where the list should start. The original arcade version of Pac-Man. The arcade version of Pac-Man is the most well-known version of Pac-Man besides the NES version, and there isn't really anything special to talk about. It's just regular Pac-Man. Now, with that being said, I will be challenging myself to at least beat the first level of every version, just so we have a common sense of how hard every version is. And with this version, I obviously recommend it because it's the original game. The Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man is surprisingly pretty decent, even though people like to dog on it all the time because they couldn't even have dots instead of lines, but honestly it isn't that bad of a version. I want to also quickly note throughout the gameplay, you'll see me die from seemingly nothing. There was a ghost there, it was just flashing. Through my end, I saw the ghost, it's just you can't see it through the gameplay. Also, I'm incredibly sorry for the gameplay going dark. I was not looking at the recording while I was playing it, so I had no clue any of this was even happening. And it has everything that you want out of a normal Pac-Man game. If you fuck with the game select switch enough, you can enable a 2-player mode, which is pretty cool. And this is one of those Atari games where if you switch the color switch, it actually turns the game black and white, instead of just keeping its color. So yeah, honestly, this is a pretty decent Pac-Man, and the map layout is different as well. And I'm actually kind of surprised they never brung back this map as like a little Easter egg in any of the Pac-Man games, but hey, I don't know, they might have. Now, there was one issue that I've had throughout the playthrough of this game, and that's the fact that I'm using an Atari 2600 controller. I know you can plug in a Sega Genesis controller, but I didn't for some reason, so controlling it sucked bad, because the Atari 2600 controller is incredibly stiff. And it also doesn't help that the hitboxes are a little off. I feel like I should have gotten a pellet, even though I didn't. So overall, do I recommend this version? Yeah, it's not too bad. Pac-Man for Atari 5200 is cute. I will not lie, these sprites are actually kind of adorable. But that might just be me. And now, how's the port? It's alright. It's definitely Pac-Man. But, again, besides that, there isn't really too much to say. I can say one thing, though, and that is the fact that if you press the start button anytime during gameplay, it will restart you back to the first level. It's pretty much just does the same thing that the restart button does, except it just takes you to the game instead of taking you to the title screen. But besides that, honestly, it isn't that bad of a port. It's pretty decent. My only issue with the game is the death animation. It takes a full 2 seconds. Now, I know that's a little nitpicky, but it's really noticeable if you've played 2 other Pac-Mans before this one. But would I recommend it? Yeah, I would actually recommend it way better than the 2600 version. So I noticed this mistake I did when recording the footage for this version of Pac-Man that I'm about to play. And that being, I forgot to turn back on the audio when I was recording the 5200 version of Pac-Man. I'm incredibly sorry that you don't get to listen to pretty much just Pac-Man. But yeah, I really did notice that mistake while recording the footage for the next Pac-Man we're going to be talking about. So yeah, sorry. Hey, our first console with multiple versions of Pac-Man, and it's the Embersun Arcadia 2001. Jesus Christ. And they're not actually Pac-Man. They are kind of bootleg clones of them. So the first one we're going to be talking about is Crazy Gobbler. Jesus fucking Christ. This is Pac-Man with a question mark. One of the things you will notice is that you can straight up just stop moving if you really wanted to. And to continue going that direction, you have to hold down that direction, which is kind of annoying. Another thing is the ghosts are not programmed correctly. They will straight up just turn around to get to you, which is not how Pac-Man ghosts work whatsoever. And when you get a power pellet, the ghosts are programmed to run away from you, which means they will just stay in a corner. Another thing you'll notice is that this game is very slow. You are very slow in it. And also the live counters use the exact same sprite as you, so they move with you. Would I recommend this? No, I would not. I would absolutely not recommend this version of Pac-Man. This is a really bad version of it. But we have two others, so hopefully one of those will be good. Next up is Cat Tracks, with an X. I legitimately got a headache recording the gameplay. Probably because of all the loud-ass fucking noises that kept playing during the entire fucking game. From picking up the pellets, which make a loud-ass squeak sound, to dying, which I would literally rather listen to someone killing a cat than listen to that fucking death sound in this game. It is god-awful, and it has the same AI for the ghosts as Crazy Gobbler. And it doesn't help the fact that since they can turn around to continue chasing you, I died twice, and I got almost no progress. And in the middle, where the fruit usually is, you get a truck. You become a truck. And it is a slow process becoming that truck. Luckily, they can't hurt you while turning into it, but still, this is not a good version of Pac-Man. This is worse than Crazy Gobbler. Now, hopefully the next game, Nibblemen, will be better. Because, Jesus, I actually got a headache recording the gameplay footage of this one. Next up, Nimblemen. Oh my god. This has the same sounds as Cat Tracks, but it actually controls good. Now, this is where I started to think that maybe it's not emulating correctly, because no way this was the actual death sound of this, and I'm not looking it up, because I don't want to hear it again. But Nimblemen is way better than Crazy Gobbler and Cat Tracks. Now, it isn't easier, nor is it good, but it's way better than those two. So if you were to emulate any of these games, go with Nimblemen. That's your best option. And also, I got a game over and I had one pellet left. Nice. I'm not doing it again. So would I recommend it? No. And that might have something to do with the difficulty. I want to give a quick mention to Casey Munchkin for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. While looking up for Pac-Man clones that could have been on this console, this came up, and it is not really that much like Pac-Man. It definitely seems more of a Pac-and-Pal than a Pac-Man, but yeah, that's why I'm not going to be reviewing it, because it's not really Pac-Man. That's like saying Lock and Chase is a direct Pac-Man clone. Next up is Muncher for the Bally Astrocade. Now, this thing was a pain to set up, but once I got it all set up, this is a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. I had no issues playing it, and I even got to 3 levels without dying, which never happened to me in Pac-Man before. So, just by that, it might be a little too easy, but hey, it's Pac-Man. Who cares if it's too easy, as long as it's not too hard. And I had no issues. It sounded like Pac-Man and it played like Pac-Man. So much so, I actually don't know how legal it is. The only issue that I came across while playing it was ghosts can go up from the home. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in Pac-Man, above the home is 2 paths that you can take, but ghosts physically cannot go up there. They are programmed specifically not to go up there. And in this port, they can, but that wasn't too much of an issue. But yeah, this version of Pac-Man is incredibly good. It's strangely good. And I 100% recommend it if you have a Bally Astrocade. It's just, if you don't have one, I would not recommend going through the steps to try and get this thing emulated, as it uses MAME, and setting up emulators in MAME is really annoying. Oh, the ColecoVision has 3 different Pac-Mans again. And only 2 of them actually officially released. That's awesome. So the first up is Pac-Man Collection, which is a collection of Pac-Man games. Who would have guessed? It includes 3 titles, Pac-Man, Pac-Man Plus, and Miss Pac-Man. But looking at the main menu, you will not see Pac-Man Plus, and that's because you have to put in a secret cheat code to get to Pac-Man Plus, and I'm not going to tell you that cheat code because we're only playing regular Pac-Man. And when you get to the game, you'll see a little credit. Yeah, you have to insert credits. I don't know how this worked. This might have been an arcade game that used a ColecoVision. I don't know. And I pressed every single button on the damn keyboard, and the one that actually adds credits is the plus button. Yikes. Playing it, though, it's Pac-Man. There isn't anything special, and I even checked to see if the ghosts can go on top from home, and they can't. So pretty much it's just Pac-Man. But it's a lot more annoying. Don't forget, this is inferior hardware. The sounds are not going to sound the best. But overall, it's a pretty decent port of Pac-Man. Here we have the prototype version of Pac-Man for ColecoVision. I was expecting this to be the exact same as the Pac-Man Collection Pac-Man, but no. This one's actually softer on the ears, and honestly, this is a pretty decent port of Pac-Man. Now, it's gotten to the point where I'm testing if the ghosts can go up from home. I gotta stop doing that, and I'll probably stop after this next one. Overall, this is a pretty decent port of Pac-Man. It's softer on the ears, and honestly, it's kinda fun. So would I recommend it? Yes. I also don't know if I said if I would recommend the Pac-Man Collection, so I would also recommend the Pac-Man Collection as well. And now we have Pac-Man from the year 2000. What the fuck? Websites were saying that this was a legit ColecoVision game, not a fucking homebrew title. Anyway, this is god-awful. The most smoothest animation is your death animation. But overall, it isn't too bad of a port. The biggest issues I've had with it are the ghosts just go wherever. I don't know if they're actually actively trying to chase you or anything. They just go. They just do whatever they want. But is this a good port of Pac-Man? It's not. Sorry, it's not that good. And from the gameplay footage, you should know why. Next up is Crazy Chewy, or Crazy Pucker, or Crazy Mooney, or Crazy Chicky for the CreativeVision. I'm not joking. This game has 4 different names. And apparently, Crazy Chicky is slightly different. Jesus. And there's another fun fact about this game. Apparently, it was the very first released game for the CreativeVision. Imagine the first game for your console being Pac-Man. I don't know how this did not fly off the shelves. Now, reviewing it, I couldn't get it to work. I straight up could not get the emulator to boot up the game. Nice. And I cannot be bothered to open up an emulator. I'm just going to delete right after this recording, all because I wanted to play one singular game of Pac-Man. So would I recommend it? No, because I couldn't even get the emulator to work. Pac-Man for Intellivision. So apparently you can't emulate Intellivision games. I've tried everything. Nothing would let me emulate it. I've tried it on Windows, and it said that I needed the BIOS files, even though I had the BIOS files in exactly where they wanted me to put it in. And I tried it on a PSP emulator. Couldn't get it to boot, it would crash. So apparently the Intellivision is physically impossible to emulate. And good, I would not want to control Pac-Man with dumb number buttons. I would not recommend it. Finally, we're back to actually playing Pac-Man again. This is Pac-Man for the Atari 7800, and it's a pretty decent port of Pac-Man. I had no issues with the game, besides one thing, and that was me going through a ghost. But that came to my benefit. But besides that, there is no major issues with this version of Pac-Man. I would 100% recommend it. Pac-Man for the Atari 8-bit console. This version of Pac-Man is another pretty cute looking one. I mean, look at these ghosts. But besides that, this plays like a pretty decent port of Pac-Man. And I'm a real big fan of the sound that plays whenever you eat a ghost. It actually makes me feel like I accomplished something today. So I would recommend it if you have an 8-bit Atari computer laying around. So weirdly, the Sega Master System did not get Pac-Man, but the Game Gear did. That sucks, because the Game Gear screen is incredibly zoomed in, and I feel claustrophobic playing this version of Pac-Man. Is it a good version of Pac-Man? Yeah, sure. It's just too zoomed in and too cluttered. It's weird, and I'm not really a fan of it. So personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. Finally, in the moment everyone's been waiting for, I finally get to talk about the NES version of Pac-Man. It's not that good. There's some things about this version that make me question stuff, like, how come stuff is not colored incorrectly? Like the fruits. You can use more than one color on the NES when it comes to sprites. I don't know why they didn't just use all the colors. And there's also the white ghost, which replaced Pinky. This one really makes me question a lot of stuff, mainly colors. Overall, it is a good version, it's just, color-wise it's weird, but I'd still recommend it. I want to make mention that somehow, some way, almost every single 4th generation video game console has no regular version of Pac-Man. This is including the CDI, the Sega Genesis, the Atari Lynx, the Super Nintendo, all the Amiga consoles, the TurboGrafx-16. All of these do not have a regular version of Pac-Man, but they have a version of Miss Pac-Man, or an alternative version of Pac-Man, like Pac-Mania. The only console that has a regular version of Pac-Man from the 4th generation is the original Game Boy. That is insane to me. I don't know how we went an entire generation of video games without a regular version of Pac-Man. So our next one is the Game Boy version of Pac-Man. So, how does the one and only 4th generation Pac-Man game hold up to the nothing else on the 4th generation? Well, it's okay. Pac-Man for Game Boy is pretty decent. It's incredibly zoomed in, more zoomed in than before. Yeah, it's so zoomed in that it has to actually scroll horizontally as well, because of the giant box they put on the side just to tell you how many lives you have, when it could have literally just been a Pac-Man in the corner with a number next to it. But besides that, this is a pretty okay version of Pac-Man. If you have a Game Boy Advance, just pick up one of the a million Pac-Mans for Game Boy Advanced. I would not recommend going for this one unless you only have an original Game Boy, or you want to play a Super Nintendo version of Pac-Man, since the Super Nintendo never got one. This one's gonna go really fast because I didn't even know it existed in the first place, but apparently there's a Game Boy Color version of Pac-Man as well. That literally the only difference is it has a proper color palette, and also comes with another game, and it was distributed by Acclaim. Thanks, Acclaim. You have now added a second Pac-Man to the 4th generation. And actually, since it's a black cartridge game as well, you can play this on a Super Nintendo in full color instead of a predetermined color palette, which is pretty cool. Hey, our first Namco Museum. Namco Museum for the Nintendo 64 has a version of Pac-Man on it, and man, do those sprites look tiny. But besides that, it is a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. And by decent, I mean okay. And by okay, I mean, yep, that is a version of Pac-Man playing on a Nintendo 64. There isn't much to say about it. And when I pressed start on the menu, it scared me. So would I recommend it? Yeah, sure. Somehow, someway, the Neo Geo Pocket Color, not the original, the color version, has Pac-Man on it. The 3DO doesn't have Pac-Man, but the Neo Geo Pocket Color does. And this version of Pac-Man just feels like the Game Gear version again. There isn't really too much to say about it. It is pretty decent, but again, I'm not a fan of the zoomed-in screen. So would I recommend it? Sadly, no. Honestly, I was expecting the PlayStation to have a lot more Namco museums and Pac-Mans, but surprisingly very little. So, Namco Museum Volume 1 for PlayStation 1 is a pretty decent collection. It's not even a pretty decent collection, it's a awesome collection. All the Namco museums for the original PlayStation are awesome, just because of all the extras they could have. Like this first one, which talks about Pac-Man coasters, and you can walk around, and it's honestly kind of cool. But honestly, I think the person that ripped this didn't rip it right, because some stuff is just weird. But you're not here for that. You're here for the Pac-Man. How does the Pac-Man play? It doesn't matter how good the presentation is if the game isn't good. It's Pac-Man. I think it might just be me, but I feel like Pac-Man controls a little weird. Like, he controls just fine, but like his movements just seem a little off to me. I don't know. I think it's just me. And there's also the fact that some sounds didn't play when they should have, like eating the ghosts. But besides all that, it's still a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. The presentation's way better than the gameplay, but honestly, it's still pretty cool. Now, the Dreamcast version of Namco Museum is not as impressive as the PlayStation version. It definitely is a lot more boring, but it's still Pac-Man, and is the exact same version as the PlayStation version. And if you really want to, you can zoom in the screen. I didn't. But yeah, besides that, it's the same as the PlayStation version. We're on the Game Boy Advance with 3 more Pac-Mans. And the first one we're trying is the classic NES series, Pac-Man. This version of Pac-Man is the NES version of Pac-Man put onto a Game Boy Advanced. And honestly, I'm not a fan of it. It's definitely worse than the NES version. And while playing, I kept going in directions that I didn't really want to go in. Like, I'll press down and I'll continue going right, because of the sprites that are bigger than the maze itself. So, yeah, it's not a very good version of Pac-Man. And it's also the NES version being compared with supposedly arcade versions of Pac-Man as well. So there's not really any reason to pick this up, unless you really like the NES version of Pac-Man. Next up is Pac-Man from the Pac-Man collection. This is a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. Now, the Pac-Man collection is just a collection of Pac-Man games. I'm not going to list all the games here. There's 4. Because we're only going to be focusing on Pac-Man. And this version of Pac-Man is pretty decent. You have the option of scroll or full screen, which I prefer full screen, but I understand why scroll's there. Again, I'm not a fan of the zoomed-in screen, so full screen's definitely a welcome change. And this version of Pac-Man's pretty decent. I would recommend this one. Namco 50th Anniversary Collection for the Game Boy Advance is interesting. I understand why the sounds are awful, but god damn are they bad. And this version of Pac-Man, it's okay. It's pretty okay. I did accidentally hit select, and that actively messed me up. Because it went to scroll, then sideways, and then back to normal. So select changes the orientation mid-gameplay, which is pretty nice, but also pretty bad. And I also did not finish the first level. But would I recommend this version? No, Pac-Man Collection is still the better one, because it has better sound. That's the only reason. Namco Museum's 50th Anniversary, you are getting most bang for your buck, but if you want a good version of Pac-Man, get the Pac-Man Collection. There's one that I'm going to be skipping, and that's Pac-Man Versus. Pac-Man Versus is kind of a real multiplayer version of Pac-Man, where the person with the Game Boy Advance controls Pac-Man, and the people on the GameCube play as the ghosts. I'm pretty sure. I couldn't play this because I don't have anything that can really emulate Pac-Man Versus. I know Dolphin can, but the problem with Dolphin is that it doesn't run well on my computer, and I would like to use real hardware for it. So yeah, I'm going to be skipping Pac-Man Versus. Now, around this point is when we just get to emulation of Pac-Man at this point, because there's no real reason to recreate Pac-Man over and over and over again, especially for newer consoles when you could just change a few lines of code for a different controller on a different console to work. So, all these versions of Namco Museum and Pac-Man I'm going to be talking about past this point is just Pac-Man. There's no difference whatsoever. But you know, we still gotta review them all to see which one's the best for which console. And the first one we have is Namco Museum for the PlayStation 2. The presentation is really nice, and I actually had no fucking clue Pac-Man was even in the original Namco Museum for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and I think Xbox. But it's there, and it comes with also Pac-Man arrangement. I didn't like it. And there's also settings for Pac-Man to change the screen size. I don't understand why. It makes a very small amount of difference, but you can still do it. But is this a good version of Pac-Man? Yeah, but you're not really getting the most for your money with this one, unlike our next one. Namco Museum 50th Anniversary for PlayStation 2. I actually own a physical copy of this. for the GameCube, and this is definitely the best collection that's the most bang for your buck. You get a bunch of games, copywritten music in the menus. On the save file editing screen, you get a little Pac-Man arcade cabinet instead of just a flat image of Pac-Man. And also, you don't have an annoying border around the games. I mean, it's kind of cool that it's in Namco Museum, but it's just unnecessary. I'd rather have it just completely black there. So is this a good version to play Pac-Man on? The presentation is phenomenal, and I think this is the best Namco collection for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and maybe Xbox. I still don't know if there's a Namco Museum for Xbox, but there might be. Next up is Namco Museum for Nintendo GameCube. Why is there differences? Why is there very small but slight differences with this one? You would expect it to be pretty much the same, but on a GameCube disc? No, there's legitimate differences. One of the things is the mass media logo, moves. It's weird because usually PlayStation 2 games are the ones that have, animated shit. Yeah, I don't know why the GameCube version has it, but not the PlayStation 2 version. Also, the menu is, yellow. I don't understand that. But besides that, it's pretty normal Pac-Man, and the option to change the screen size actually makes a significant difference this time, instead of, 3 pixels. But yeah, this one still isn't as good as the 50th anniversary of Namco Museum, but, it's still interesting that there's slight differences with this one and the PS2 version. Namco Museum 50th Anniversary for Nintendo GameCube. I have actually kind of strong nostalgia for this because I used to play the shit out of it at my grandma's house on the Wii, on the big living room TV. And luckily I was able to keep the copy because no one played it. So now I still have this copy of Namco Museum, and the reason I wasn't able to capture this from, real hardware was because, one, I couldn't be bothered to change in-kit ROMs to regular ROMs, and also my Wii's disk drive is broken. Yeah, that's why I played these on emulator. Now, overall, this is the exact same as the PS2 version of Namco Museum 50th Anniversary, just on GameCube, which is still the best version of Pac-Man to buy for GameCube, as you're getting a bunch of Namco games, and it's not just Pac-Man. So, usually I would review the original Xbox versions of Namco Museum. Except I can't, because emulating the Xbox is a pain in the ass, and I don't have physical copies of any of these games, and also I don't have a controller for the original Xbox I do have, so I'm not able to actually, put the ROMs on there. But I just really wanted to see what color they chose for Namco Museum, because the GameCube version's, yellow, and the PlayStation 2 version's, white. They chose the bluest blue I've ever seen. Like, this is so blue that sad is less blue. Like, man. But again, if I had to say, go with the 50th anniversary, because overall it's the most bang for your buck. Onto the Wii, we're gonna start with the Virtual Console version of NES Pac-Man. It's just NES Pac-Man again, but like darker. That's about it. There's not really much to talk about with Virtual Console, and this is the only time I'll be mentioning Virtual Console of Pac-Man, because these are all legitimately the exact same game, just on different hardware. But if you really like NES Pac-Man, get this on Wii, Wii U, and 3DS. Any means necessary, since all their eShops are closed. But I'm pretty sure all these consoles have a way of playing like a good version of Pac-Man, so I wouldn't really recommend going with the NES version. Namco Museum Megamix, not Remix, Megamix. Now, this is one of, if not the most annoying fucking things I've had to deal with. When you hear Namco Museum Remix, and you heard that it comes with the classic Namco games, you would think it would come with a regular fucking copy of Pac-Man. No, it does not. It comes with Pac-N-Pal, though. How the hell are you gonna put Pac-N-Pal above Pac-Man? And it doesn't help the fact that controlling this thing is annoying as hell. And I had to legitimately search around just to find the museum of the classic games just so I can realize, oh shit, this is not the one with the regular Pac-Man. Yeah. So, booting up actual Megamix now, there's Pac-Man. I'm happy they included Pac-Man in the remake of this game. So now whenever you buy Remix, you realize, oh shit, I wasted my money. Instead of buying Megamix, which is the one that just has a regular version of Pac-Man. And honestly, this isn't fun. Having to go through this hub world just to play regular Pac-Man. And what sucks is that it's either this or Virtual Console NES Pac-Man. You don't really get a choice for legitimate Pac-Mans on the Wii. So the Wii is probably the worst console to play Pac-Man on, honestly. But since this is really your only Pac-Man, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that Wii owners only got 2 versions of Pac-Man, and they're both annoying as hell. Ooh, another game I can't play. Pac-Man Museum for Xbox Live Arcade and PS3. Yeah, I can't play these because this was delisted. And the fact is, and I really don't want to deal with like downloading ROM of this and trying to figure out how an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3 emulator works. There's also a giant risk of just using emulators like those anyway, so yeah, no. I'm just gonna skip Pac-Man Museum. But it is nice to know that we're almost done with this. We're getting close to finishing up the real console and handheld ports of Pac-Man. We haven't even gotten into computer or mobile ports of Pac-Man yet, or even miscellaneous versions of Pac-Man, like the plug-and-plays. But it's still nice to know that we're almost done. Namco Museum DS for, you could probably guess what. And, well, this beginning cutscene is a little cute. I sure hope the game doesn't look like actual ass. Jesus Christ. Yeah, this game doesn't look that good. And this game has like 100 different options to make this game look a little better. Yeah, I'm just gonna play it with default. And overall, this is a pretty decent Pac-Man for on the go. But I still think the Game Boy Advance version is slightly better from the Pac-Man collection. This one is pretty decent, but it's just no Pac-Man collection. But you do get a handful more games like Galaga and Dig Dug. And hey, it even has Pac-Man Versus. I didn't know there was another version of Pac-Man Versus. Namco Museum Battle Collection for the PlayStation Portable. Surprisingly, there was never a PSP Mini for Pac-Man, but there was a full-on collection that had Pac-Man in it. And this version of Pac-Man is probably the best one you're going to get for playing Pac-Man on the go, as it looks perfect. Now, if you're wondering why the gameplay is so slow, I honestly don't know. Pac-Man is too intensive for my PSP emulator running on my computer. Yet Family Guy the video game isn't. I don't know how that works. But yeah, the gameplay is going to be very slow. But assure you, this should run perfectly fine on normal hardware. And again, this is probably the best one you're going to get for playing Pac-Man on the go. Besides getting like Pac-Man Museum Plus for the Switch. But overall, this is probably the best you're going to get for a Pac-Man on the go. And also, using the D-pad is a very smart move than using the joystick, because the PSP joystick sucks, like hard. So using the D-pad is definitely optimal. Pac-Man for Xbox 360. This is a very good port of Pac-Man. I would say probably even the best. And hey, look, achievements. And this game has pretty reasonable achievements, like eat each kind of fruit, beat certain levels, eat all 4 ghosts 4 times in a row in a single round, one of the worst achievements ever in Pac-Man. And it comes back in future versions of Pac-Man with achievements. But besides that, this Pac-Man controls really good. And I mean really good. Like, this is probably the best you're going to get at a home console Pac-Man. And you can still buy it too, and it's one of those things that gets frequent discounts. Same thing with the arcade classics Pac-Man as well. So if you have the money, pick up one of these two. Now, just to get the Wii U out of the way, there is a handful of ways to play Pac-Man on the Wii U, but personally I think the best way is through the Pac-Man collection. I shit you not, the Pac-Man collection from the Game Boy Advanced is one of the games you could buy on the Wii U Virtual Console. Of course, regular Pac-Man's there, but why would you get that when you could get the Pac-Man collection? Holy shit. That's actually like one of the best Wii U Virtual Console games besides Mario Advanced 4. And having all the e-reader levels. So yeah, luckily Wii U fans have a pretty decent way of playing Pac-Man. But surprisingly, besides that, there really wasn't a normal Pac-Man release on the Wii U. Besides the Virtual Consoles and the Super Smash Bros. Wii U Masterpiece having a demo of Pac-Man for NES there. Man, there's just no good way to play Pac-Man on this thing besides that Pac-Man collection, huh? Next up, we have Pac-Man and Galaga Dimensions for Nintendo 3DS. Why did they call it that? That's a weird name. And really, this collection is just Pac-Man and Galagas. If it was awesome, this is, I'm gonna say it, this is better than the PSP Pac-Man. Because you have several different versions of Pac-Man. Why? This is a really cool collection for the 3DS. Now, as you can tell from the gameplay footage, I forgot I had, like, speed turned up. Yeah, sorry. But besides that, this is a really cool collection, and I would recommend it if you have a 3DS. Or just hack one and put it on there. Because this collection is awesome from the very little bit that I played of just Pac-Man. We're on the home stretch of official console Pac-Man ports. Or as official as we can get. Now, of course, I'm going to be skipping Nintendo Switch, PS4, and PS Vita. Because all of these are still in circulation, so there's no emulation of it. And I'm not going to buy entire consoles just for Pac-Man. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Pac-Man Museum Plus, which is the sequel to Pac-Man Museum on the 360 and PS3. This came out on Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. And honestly, this is a really nice collection. You can choose whatever song. You can rearrange your little Pac-Man arcade room. It's honestly really cool. Now, how does the Pac-Man play? It plays like Pac-Man. Who would have guessed? But besides that, this is a very cool collection, and I would recommend playing it. And what's even more cool about it is that it's on Game Pass. So really, you don't even have to buy it. Or until they take it off of Game Pass. So I may or may not have straight up just bought a Pac-Man for this video. But you can't blame me. It was 3 arcade games for $7. Like, come on. So now we're going to be talking about the arcade game series Pac-Man for Xbox One and most likely PS4. I don't know if it's on there. And this version of Pac-Man annoys the shit out of me. The reason being is that the overlay that it has, that actually covers up the game screen, which I'm not a fan of. And also the fact that I can't really zoom it in very well either. And you would think, oh, just turn off the overlay. You can't turn off that overlay. It has to be there. You can't just have it black, which is kind of annoying for me because I'm not going to lie, it's very distracting. But hey, at least I can enable the 256th bug, or the fucking test image that it plays whenever you boot up Pac-Man. That's pretty cool. But besides that, this really just feels like the Xbox 360 version of Pac-Man, just ported onto Xbox One. I mean, even most of the achievements are the same, except with a few extra ones. Now, another issue that I have with this is that achievements will pop during gameplay. Yikes, because it actually covers up the bottom row of dots. Now, the default size negates that, but you know me, I like having my screen zoomed in so I can see the full board. So you can imagine how upsetting it would be. But besides the handful of flaws with it, this is still a pretty decent version of Pac-Man, but I would personally prefer Pac-Man Museum Plus. I feel like that's the best bundle, because even with the $7, you only get 3 arcade games, while with Pac-Man Museum Plus, you get a bunch of Pac-Man. Namco Museum Archives Volume 1. I'm not paying $20 for this. That is way too much money for 11 NES games. Yeah, these are the NES versions of these games. Which, I mean, it's pretty cool being able to have an official way to play Mappy, the NES version of Mappy, since that never came out in the US. But this is still not a good collection, because it's $20 for NES games. That also includes the NES version of Pac-Man. How come they're so consistent with releasing the NES version of Pac-Man? It doesn't make sense. Almost every console has the NES version. Now, would I say this is a good collection? I mean, it is 11 11 NES games for $20. So I'm not 100% sure. Personally, I would just choose, like, if you really wanted to play Pac-Man, just choose that $3 arcade game series Pac-Man if you really want to play Pac-Man. And this is also another release with the NES version of Championship Edition, which is a very kind of hard game to come across. But besides a handful of this stuff, there's no reason to buy this besides NES Pac-Man if you're a real big fan of NES Pac-Man. And with that, that's almost every official console port of Pac-Man. Now, I will be splitting up this video in 3 different parts. You have just watched part 1, talking about the console and handheld versions of Pac-Man. Part 2 will be the PC and mobile ports of Pac-Man, because honestly those take a lot longer. And part 3 will be the miscellaneous versions of Pac-Man, that being your plug-and-plays, your bootlegs, your homebrews, and all of that nature. Now, I originally wanted all these to be put into one full, like, long video. I couldn't do that. Trust me, I really want to, but I can't, because that would be a giant pain in the ass for not just me, but also my hard drive. So, yeah, that's why I'm doing these in parts. And also just so I can get this video released and I can stop having, like, 50 different gameplay footages of Pac-Man on my computer. So yeah, stay tuned for part 2 of Pac-Man that will release in, like, another 50 months. Welcome to part 2 of playing every version of Pac-Man. I'm not going to play every version. That's because some of them I straight up can't. Like, any of them that require an iPhone or a Mac, I can't do. I can't do any of those. Because emulating iPhones and Macs is still impossible. And finding old versions of Android versions of Pac-Man, that's pretty difficult too. I can't do that either. But yeah. But before we actually get on with playing the mobile and PC versions of Pac-Man, I actually want to do a little update on the previous versions, because there's a lot of Pac-Man that I missed. Now, I'm just going to straight up just skip the Switch. I know I missed a bunch of Switch versions of Pac-Man. It's all the same fucking game at the end of the day, who cares? But there are some that I legitimately didn't talk about that I didn't know existed. And I also got access to a few more Pac-Man as well. By a few more, I mean 1. But still. And another thing I should say is, when we do get to the PC section, I'm not going to be talking about the Pac-Man that I already talked about in the first video. So all the ones that I talked about for Xbox One, like the Namco Archives, Pac-Man Museum Plus, I already talked about those, and the PC version is the exact same. So yeah, let's get on with the Pac-Man that I missed, or I can now actually review. So the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis did have a version of Pac-Man, but getting to it is such a pain. To get to it, you have to play Pac-Man 2, which already isn't the best game to play, and you need to find the arcade, which if you just keep going right, you'll eventually find it. And go into the arcade, show Pac-Man that there's a Pac-Man arcade machine, and play Pac-Man. It's not worth the setup. They're based on the NES version of Pac-Man, which already isn't the best version of Pac-Man. But, I mean, at least it's something. At least you can play Pac-Man on the Super Nintendo and Genesis. Another thing is, the Super Nintendo and Genesis do have a difference with that arcade, in that they have different games. They both have Pac-Man, but the Super Nintendo has Miss Pac-Man, while the Genesis has Pac-Man Jr. I just thought that was interesting. But yeah. Still, though, it's not worth it.
Especially if you have a Super Nintendo, get a Super Game Boy and just put like the Game Boy version of Pac-Man. That's the closest you're getting. So after doing the tedious task of going back to the arcade, the game crashing, changing the emulator, then going back to that arcade, and the game finally working, the sound is really crunchy, and I'm not a fan of it. I'm not gonna lie though, I love the death sound though. That death sound kinda goes hard. But yeah. Honestly, I think the Super Nintendo one's your best bet, but again, for how long it takes just to get into a game of Pac-Man, it's not worth it. So, would I recommend would I recommend the Super Nintendo and Genesis version of Pac-Man? No, just because it's such a pain in the ass to even play it. Namco Museum on the original Xbox. I talked about the blue menu, and I finally get to see the blue menu in person. Though, sadly, I do not have the 50th anniversary version of Namco Museum, but that's just the same as all the others. While this one, you know, the difference is blue menu, and the screen size actually makes a difference. But yeah, I did have an issue, though, and that's with the original Xbox controller. Since I did play this on actual original Xbox hardware, these sticks do not feel like they work very well with Pac-Man. Like, these were meant for, like, actual games, not arcade games. And I was a lot more comfortable using the D-pad, which, if you're going to play Pac-Man, I would use a stick. But in this case, I think the D-pad is perfect, since, again, the sticks don't really feel that good. I also don't have a Duke controller. I have the redesigned controller, the S. So it has a normal D-pad, but still. However you see it, this game is not that good. So if you're going to pick up Namco Museum or the 50th anniversary, I wouldn't really recommend the Xbox version. I'd probably recommend the PS2 or GameCube version.
The first game on our list is Pac-Man for iOS and Android. It's just called Pac-Man. And it's asking me for my age. Why the fuck does Pac-Man need my age? Well, it's for the ads. Nice. It's fucking Pac-Man. And finally actually getting into the game, this is not Pac-Man. No, this is like a story mode for Pac-Man. Ugh. And I shit you not, after 5 fucking levels of this story mode, we can finally play real Pac-Man. And it sucks. Besides all the weird minor things, like the death animation being really fast and some music just not playing correctly, like coffee break in the menus is just slowed for no reason. And the actual coffee break, since clicking on level 1 of classic mode immediately takes you to level 2 of Pac-Man, I don't know why. When the actual coffee break plays, it doesn't even get to finish the second loop. And also, this version just doesn't control that good because it requires swiping. And since iPhones are super fucking sensitive for no goddamn reason, swiping means sometimes you'll just turn around or go in a completely different direction than where you wanted to go, making it more jittery than the fucking snapback of the damn plug-and-play version. So yeah, overall, this is not a good way to play Pac-Man. On top of also having ads, I really would not recommend playing the iOS or Android version of Pac-Man. If you really want to play Pac-Man, download an emulator and a ROM. And there you go. And now it's time for our last mobile Pac-Man game, Pac-Maze Escape Runner. Now, I'm not going to be doing the Android store because honestly I can't be bothered. So we're just doing the iPhone stuff. Because I'm pretty sure the Android games are all the exact same. And let me tell you, this game is a knockoff of Pac-Man 256 and the mobile Pac-Man game with the story mode. So that's already a good start. It's a knockoff of 2 different Pac-Man games. And I honestly recommend turning off the sound, because just getting the dots is annoying as shit. And also, I can't lie, the music is kind of a banger. So much so that I actually ripped it and uploaded it to my archive channel, because it's so fucking good. Like, best damn music in the world. Even though it's just your average... Even though it's just your average random, like, stock music, it's still a fucking bop. But there was one thing that confused me, and that's why Among Us are in this game. Why is Among Us in this game? Why are these here? Yeah, but besides all those flaws, this one ain't too bad. But if you're gonna play Pac-Man on mobile, again, just get an emulator and a ROM of Pac-Man.
I really liked Pac-Man for Java Phone. Probably because every single piece of music and most sound effects are made with MIDIs. Which, honestly, for like eating the ghost and stuff, it honestly kind of feels like you're eating a ghost. Then there is the god-awful coffee break theme, and the even worse death theme. But is this a good version of Pac-Man? Sure. Apparently it also has multiplayer support as well, which is kind of sick. But yeah, this Java Pac-Man is honestly pretty interesting. And it's just kind of neat, you know? And that was all the mobile versions of Pac-Man that I could find. Yeah, very short list, huh? Only like 2 real Pac-Man and 1 knockoff 256 clone. On to the PC versions. The BBC Micro has like 1,500 goddamn versions of Pac-Man on it. So I just chose the oldest one that was actually called Pac-Man. How's the game? It sucks. It sucks. I hate it so much. A, Z, and an M is how you play. The game is very unresponsive, the sounds are annoying, and every time you die, the dots respawn. This is a really bad version of Pac-Man. Now, that Pac-Man that came out in 2020 for the BBC Micro, might actually be, like, really good. But I just chose the oldest one. And I don't think this computer actually had an official version of Pac-Man. Next up is the Apple II. It's okay. One of my biggest complaints is that the power pellet lasts a little too short. Like, I think it should last a little longer. And also, the fact that the intro music was Coffee Break and not the actual game start music is hilarious to me. And this game has support for 5 players. Jesus. But still, this one's okay. This one's also another one that uses A and Z to go up and down. I'm starting to think these consoles don't have an up and down button. I couldn't get this one to work. When I tried to boot it up in an emulator, it just never booted. And when I tried an online emulator, it wasn't the right game. Yeah, I couldn't get this one to work. And honestly, I don't think I was really missing much. Pac-Man on the Commodore 64. I don't know if this is official or not. I mean, everything points to it being official. And there's also the fact that it had this awesome intro and asked me for unlimited lives. No thanks. And again, I couldn't even play the game. So yeah, honestly, I don't even know if this is like official or not. And when it comes to the Commodore 64, it's really difficult to find official stuff. But I've looked around and I genuinely don't know. Pac-Man for the PC 8801. I think that was the version. Sucked ass. It's first of all, it's annoying. Second of all, you don't get a break. Again, the power pellet lasts a little too short. The game is just bad. And the map layout is weird. The ghosts are constantly chasing you. There's no there's no other state. It's just constantly chasing you. And I couldn't even finish one level. Yeah, overall this version sucked, and for how long I had to set it up just to play it, yeah, no, it wasn't worth it. The FM7 has a version of Pac-Man. I have no clue how to use this fucking thing. I had to look up guides just to figure out how to load a game. Just for it to say that it didn't work. Jesus Christ. This thing is way too much of a pain in the ass just to play a version of Pac-Man, which probably wouldn't even be that good in the first place. Skipping the Sharp X one because I will genuinely start tweaking if I have to look up more information about obscure Japanese computers that has little to no documentation whatsoever. The emulator you can barely even download, and finding the ROMs themselves are really difficult. Let's skip straight to a console that actually does have documentation, is pretty well known, at least in the Japanese sphere, and actually has games for it that you can just look up. The X68000. And this version of Pac-Man is nice. It's a really good version of Pac-Man. And that's something interesting about the Sharp X68000 series. All the Namco games for them are like probably one of the best versions of those games. They have nice, soothed soundtracks sometimes, like Bosconian. And overall, they're really nice versions. Now, this version of Pac-Man does feel a little slow, but besides that, it's a really good version of the game, which is nice. It's a nice refresher from the troubles that I've been having with the other goddamn Pac-Mans. So yeah, I'd 100% recommend this one. Pac-Man for the ZX Spectrum makes me want to cry. Like, it's so bad. It doesn't even feel like Pac-Man. And the Power Pellet, I know I've complained about it being too short. The Power Pellet lasts way too long in this version. Like, I practically cleared out the entire board without even giving the ghosts a chance to become normal again. But besides that, it's not too bad. But I mean, it's not the best way to play Pac-Man. Pac-Man for the Amstrad CPC, for some reason, was really laggy. I have no clue why. All the other Internet Archive, emulation didn't lag. This one did. I have no clue why. and I have several issues with it. One, the ghosts always chase you. Why? There's no wonder state. At least I don't feel like it. And ghosts can go up from home, which sucks. They're not supposed to do that. And also, I'm starting to realize a lot of these have a green ghost. Why? Why is this like a common theme? I just noticed it. A handful of these had a green ghost. There is no green ghost in Pac-Man. But yeah, overall, this isn't really that interesting. So, I ain't got much to say about it. Would I recommend it? Not really. Pac-Man for MSX. I'll keep this one short so we can talk about the funny one. But for being a Pac-Man clone, because I'm not sure if this is official or not, it's really good. It's like surprisingly decent. Now, the maze feels small. I don't know if it actually is smaller than the normal Pac-Man maze, but it just feels small. It feels kind of claustrophobic to play this version, and it's clearly based off the NES version. But besides that, it's a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. Now let's get on to the funny one.
This is Joey, Paul, Willie, and Frankie.
Oh shit oh no is a knockoff of the MSX version of Pac-Man. And it's most notable for its text-to-speech, saying the names of the ghosts, which are just like stupid names, and the famous death sound. But yeah, so how is this as a Pac-Man knockoff? It's pretty good. But like, if you're going to play Pac-Man on MSX, you can either choose like the really good MSX version, or you can play the one with the funny text-to-speech voice. What the hell is going on? But for real though, the official version of Pac-Man for DOS isn't really that interesting. There isn't much to say about it except for green ghosts. There's more of them now. They're starting to spread. And the ear-piercing sounds that this game makes constantly. Don't even get me started when a ghost is just eyes. But besides that, there isn't really much to talk about it, and it's overall just an version of Pac-Man. So our next segment is Windows, and God knows how many Pac-Mans have been released on Windows. Heck, even just the ones that were released on web browsers alone. So I'm just going to get through as many of these as I can. Again, these are not exactly the easiest to find when looking up, because if you just look up Pac-Man for PC, it's just going to come up with like the Steam page of the Pac-Mans I've already reviewed for Xbox One. So yeah. But anyway, let's get on with the weird individual Pac-Man releases and Namco museums as well. Pac-Man, or Chomp, on the Fun Pack is the most funny one out of all the games because it's the one with the most issues. It cannot be maximized, it has no sound, and on Pentium computers it may run a little too fast to play, which I can confirm it does run a little too fast to play. But the fact that this Pac-Man knockoff has so many issues is so interesting and funny. Would I recommend it? No. But it's just so funny how it has all these issues. Pac-Man for Microsoft Return to the Arcade Anniversary Edition. Now, why specifically the Anniversary Edition? Because the original didn't have the original Pac-Man on it. But it had Miss Pac-Man. And this version is a remake of Pac-Man. It is not a direct port. I can tell because, one, when you finish a level, the maze doesn't flash, and two, the coffee break cutscene is like a little fast. Like the ghost touches Pac-Man, so like it's weird. But is this a good version of Pac-Man? Kinda. My only real complaint is the sounding like a Flash game. But besides that, there isn't really anything bad or wrong with it. So apparently Namco Museum 50th Anniversary had a PC port. Did not know that existed until making this video. And obviously it's the best bang for your buck for Pac-Man. And the file that I got off Internet Archive is a really good file because it doesn't even have the menus. That's my one downside of it. The Pac-Man is perfectly fine. It's 50th Anniversary Namco Museum Pac-Man. But I mean, the menus were everything. It had copywritten music. It was a nice visual. Yeah, this thing just gave you a blank menu, which sucks. I'm pretty sure a little bit of it's off screen too. That sucks even more. My presentation was everything. It even extracts the music files, which means the stuff for the normal menus there. But besides that, this is obviously your best bet if you want to play a lot of Namco games on your computer, is the Namco Museum 50th Anniversary. Like I say with every other console, it's the most bang for your buck. The Pac-Man Doodle from Google is a pretty decent version of Pac-Man. What I don't like is that there's dead ends. That's really bad. Yeah, the E is not a very good spot. So that should be like one of the first ones that you get with a power pellet. And the G has a power pellet at the end, so that makes up for it. But still, this is an okay version of Pac-Man. I don't hate it. And it's not bad if you're just like bored in school and you need something to do real fast and you're bored of Snake, you know? But yeah, so the Google Doodle version of Pac-Man ain't too bad. We might as well talk about this one. This one isn't official, but, I mean, it's such a classic part. We all played it when we were younger. Anti-Pac-Man, where you play as one of the ghosts and you try to get Pac-Man. There isn't much to the game. But, I mean, it's a neat concept. You don't see it all that much, except for multiplayer Pac-Man games. But, still, just to be able to play a single-player Pac-Man game where you're the ghost, that's pretty cool. Next up is Pac-Man Mini, which is actually kind of interesting because this is an officially licensed Bandai Namco created Pac-Man for HTML5 to play on their website. It's no longer available, but it is available on Flashpoint. And this was made by Bandai Namco? Because it sure doesn't seem like it. First of all, the ghosts look weird. Like, there's just something about them, man. And their state almost never changes. So which means they're constantly chasing Pac-Man. But they do have go into their separate corner state, but the second you grab a power pellet, it automatically gets rid of that. So there's no point of even having it in the first place. So it's just, there's so many things wrong with this version of Pac-Man. The creators of Pac-Man made it. How did they fuck it up so bad? And I will be skipping the, 100 promotional Pac-Man that's out there, because they're all the same game at the end of the day. And I don't want to go repeat myself over and over and over for the exact same version of Pac-Man on the exact same platform. Because they're all just using a keyboard. And with that, that's like all the versions of Pac-Man I can find for mobile phones and PC. I did skip through some, and I'm really sorry that I did. The one because I didn't want to bother with them, or I'm just gonna say that you can't. The ones I didn't want to bother with are like the PDA version of Pac-Man. I don't want to bother with that. I don't want to hunt down the files to the PDA version of Pac-Man just to have a lackluster experience. And there's some that I'm just sure you can't play anymore, like the Windows Phone version of Pac-Man. And of course, there's all the Apple devices. Like I said, I can't really do those except for like the Apple II. So stuff like the iPod Classic version of Pac-Man, I can't do that. Unless I get an iPod Classic. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know if it was worth the year for a kinda short video, but hey, you know, part 3 might be at least a tad bit longer. Or who knows, it might actually be shorter. But hey, I hope you enjoyed, you know? I hope you enjoyed this video. Welcome to the Pac-Man video. This is the third part, the final part. This is going to be the other versions of Pac-Man. The Pac-Mans I didn't specifically put in any of these categories because I don't think they really fit under any of those categories. Now, of course, I'm going to be missing a bunch of Pac-Mans, and I know I've already missed a shitload of Pac-Mans because I have no means of playing it. And after this video, no more Pac-Man. I'm not going to be playing any more goddamn Pac-Mans or make full-ass videos for Pac-Man. I've already made a review of Pac-Man, and I've already made 2 other parts of playing every Pac-Man. But, you know, after this, no more. I can scratch it off my list. Anyway, let's just get to the cleanup of the Pac-Mans I wasn't able to play, or I now have like an official means of playing it. Pac-Man Museum for the Xbox 360 and I think PlayStation 3. I think it's on there. It is a pretty alright version of Pac-Man. It has its own achievement list, and you bet it has the fucking achievement for eating all 4 ghosts. And with this Pac-Man collection also comes a bunch of other Pac-Mans, which I'll talk about right here, since I'm cleaning up all the Pac-Mans in this video. First up is Pac-Man Championship Edition, which is pretty much just like challenges to do in Pac-Man. It's not really an interesting game. If I were to recommend this one, I would recommend the Xbox One version, Championship Plus, which I think comes with more, or Championship Edition 2. I will say, though, the game does look neat, though. And I think that's one of the appeals with Championship Edition, is that it's pretty neat looking. Then there's Pac-Man Arrangement, which I think this is from the PSP. I could be wrong, but this is looking vaguely PSP-like. So I think this is from the PSP Namco Museum. But I don't like this one. It's too fucking easy. And there's a boss battle in it, which reminds me of Boolossus. So this one sucks. Then there's Pac-Man Battle Royale, which kind of reminds me of that recent Pac-Man Battle Royale game, which I think is where they got some of their inspiration from. You know, the new Pac-Man Battle Royale game. It lasted like 2 days before it died. And you can't even get all the achievements because the achievement for getting all the other achievements is broken. Yeah. This one was kind of forgettable, but I did like the concept of it. It seemed fun to play with others, but I didn't have anyone with me. And there's Pac-Mania. I hated this one because it was at a not even a top-down angle, so it just really messed me up. And you can jump in this, which I think is kind of useless because it's Pac-Man. I hated this one too. It wasn't fun. But that was Pac-Man Museum. All the other Pac-Mans on this collection aren't your typical Pac-Mans. They're like Tetris and a shitty platformer. And that's all I have about... And that's about it for the cleanup. It's actually pretty good that I saved Pac-Man Museum for here, especially since Bad Update came out, and I can now actually play this game. But since I can now actually play this game, and it's part 3 where I'm doing the cleanup of all the Pac-Mans that I purposefully missed because they're a different formula, it's good that I was able to have a chance to play this one. So I can just get these Pac-Mans off the list. Miss Pac-Man. Now, there's a reason why I didn't talk about this one while talking about the other Pac-Mans, and that's because, well, it's too unique. It's kind of like Championship Edition. It's too different to be considered normal Pac-Man for me. As some of the main differences are, the ghosts apparently act different, like this 1-hour video says. There's different foods, like a pretzel, and the map actually changes a handful of times if you get to the levels where it changes. But overall, I would actually say Miss Pac-Man is more worth your money than original Pac-Man. Because Miss Pac-Man, you know, the level changes. That's more entertaining than just playing the same level over and over and over. But the thing about original Pac-Man is, like, you can get used to that maze, figure out how exactly the ghosts work, and you can, you know, you get better each time, while Miss Pac-Man, since the map changes, you have a little bit more trouble, you know, getting better at it. But yeah, Miss Pac-Man's honestly pretty good. I'm sad this game is in fucking legal hell. I think it's copyright hell. Kind of like Beavis and Butthead and Dogma. Where it's either expensive as shit to license, or there's too many legal issues with licensing it. Munchman for the Texas Instruments TI-99. Honestly, I thought that was a fucking calculator, and I only found out about this game because of Spriter's Resource, because I thought this was for a calculator. But yeah, this version of Pac-Man is probably one of the worst fucking controlling Pac-Mans I've ever played. The reason being is because you use E to move up, S to move left, D to move right, and X to move down, instead of the arrow keys. But besides that, it's an alright version of Pac-Man. One of my favorite parts about this Pac-Man is that once you get them with a power pellet or a fucking Texas Instruments logo, they actually stay at home until the power-up runs out, which means you can just, like, keep them there for a while. But still, the controls are what made this fucking unplayable for me. I need to start learning the names of these things. But these, like, mini arcade Pac-Man machines, I have 2 of them. I'm just gonna lump them together, because they're practically the same thing. One of them has a lit-up screen with colors, and the other one's monochrome and not lit up like the original Game Boy. Or a Game & Watch machine. But yeah, these are fun to dick around a bit. These are cute. These aren't exactly good versions of Pac-Man. The ghosts are constantly flashing, and the game is incredibly difficult to play, but it's not bad. And it even has the two main songs, like when you start a match and coffee break when you pause it. And there's actually 2 modes. There's normal Pac-Man and this version of Pac-Man where you're just supposed to get the power pellets in the, like, corners. Yeah, that's about it. They're both pretty much the same machine, except one's in color and has a light. But these are just kind of cute. I don't hate them. This Pac-Man plug-and-play machine, I don't actually know what it's called. I'll put the name up on the screen. I have reviewed it in the past, and if you want to know, like, my full feelings about the damn thing, yeah, go watch that. But in short, I don't like how the joystick feels. It feels very cheap, and just by hearing it, it sounds incredibly clicky. It doesn't feel nice to play with. It has horrible snapback, but the emulation quality of the games is really good. And this doesn't just come with Pac-Man, it comes with a bunch of other games as well, including other versions of Pac-Man, which we'll talk about here, like Super Pac-Man, aka it has gambling and it was super fucking loud and I barely knew what I was doing half the time. Then there was Pac-and-Pal, aka Pal stealing food and you need to collect that food. I remember I picked up the Galaga thing and you can actually shoot the ghosts with that. There's no normal power pellets with that one. Pac-Man Plus, which is like what a bootleg version of Pac-Man would be. Some of the power pellets don't fully get every ghost, and if you collect the Coca-Cola in the middle, and if you drink the Coke in the middle, it like turns them invisible for some shit, and you can like eat them. So like the fruit or the fucking drinks in the middle act like another power pellet. It's really weird. And then there was Pac-Man 256, which is just the last level of Pac-Man, which, if you don't know, is a giant glitchy mess. Here's the problem with Pac-Man 256. You actually have to beat the last level of Pac-Man before you get to the glitchy part. And if you don't know, Pac-Man on the later levels is incredibly fucking difficult, as the power pellets don't actually do anything. They just turn the ghosts around. And it took me 3 separate attempts just to beat that level. Yeah, it's not easy. And in the original review, I actually couldn't do it. But now that I'm a Pac-Man pro by playing a million goddamn Pac-Mans, it's just beating the last level of Pac-Man, and it's very nice that it gives you the maximum amount of lives to do it. But I don't know why they couldn't just start on the last level. Yeah, this one had a lot to say. There's also other games like Mappy and Pole Position, but I mean, if you're buying the Pac-Man plug and play, you're going to play it for Pac-Man. Ignore if the screen gets darker in this recording. The device I'm using to record this shit fucking sucks. It was either that or it was because one of the batteries was slowly coming out of the machine, and that's something you gotta realize with these plug-and-play machines. If you buy them secondhand, they're not gonna come with the fucking battery cover. But this plug-and-play TV games Namco doesn't have a good version of Pac-Man on it. Of course, I got far in it, about 4 levels into it, so it must be good, right? Surprisingly, no. The thing about these plug and plays is that you can usually tell when it's a recreation versus a like emulated port. Like with the Pac-Man plug and play that we just looked at, that seemed like it was emulated or ported to the machine. It had the correct sounds, it played correctly, normal mechanics, everything. While this one, it has off sounds, like the sounds don't sound that good, and for some ungodly reason, they changed how Blinky works. Instead of going into the corner like the other ghosts, he just circles around home. Why? But the sad part about this is, it has a good metal stick. That's what you want for Pac-Man, is a metal stick. That's good and has very little snapback to it. So this is overall a really good machine, but the problem is the version of Pac-Man on it sucks. Now, of course, I also tried Dig Dug. Yeah, I'm deaf now. But this is also a really good way to show that these aren't direct ports, but like remakes, because the dragons are supposed to give you a warning before they shoot their fire. They don't in this port. They straight up don't. They just kind of shoot whenever they want. That's awesome, man. So yeah, good controller, bad version of these games. Here we are. The last one. Now, I did skip a lot of them, like Pac-Man 99 was one I skipped because the servers are lost media. And, you know, a few other Pac-Mans that I'm either not aware of or I can't play. But yeah, here's the last one. NES Pac-Man on a bootleg NES Classic that I got from a fucking outlet store. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know if this thing has Pac-Man on it or not. I mean, if this is gonna be my last time playing Pac-Man for a video, I might as well, you know, play every goddamn version I have, right? Alright. Are these in... No, they are not. Okay. These are not in alphabetical. Oh, shit, they do have Pac-Man. Number 135. God damn it. It's just gonna be a badly emulated version of NES fucking Pac-Man. The Pac-Man I'm not a fan of. Alright, let's get this fucking thing set up. Yeah, we're doing like live reaction because this thing's fucking awful, you know. We're gonna have a little camera in the corner while we're reviewing this one. What the fuck? It's not a good sound. I'm not too fond of that sound. It wasn't in all the way. There we go. Alright. Ah! You know, I got this at an outlet store because the mall that was selling these had to dump them somewhere. So they all dumped it at an outlet. It was 130 something. Alright, 135. Okay, that's how I skip by like 20s. Start. Alright, Pac-Man. I don't know which version of Pac-Man this is. I know there's different versions of Pac-Man on NES, but they're all like the exact same. This is edited to hell. Like, what the fuck? What? The fuck did they do to the names? That is not their fucking name. Oh my god. Is that... I don't even know, man. And the picture looks like ass. Also, this is NES. Why did it need 2 audio cables? Oh wow, really getting that stereo NES sound, huh? It doesn't matter, my capture device doesn't even do stereo. I've been thinking about getting one for like AV to HDMI, which I definitely should get. Is it just me or are the ghosts slower? They seem really slow. I don't know, I need to play like the original NES version. Because it's been a while since I played that version. I am happy to announce there is no white ghost this time, which I'm very happy about. But Pinky is looking a little fucking disgusting. And Blinky's practically black. Yeah, it's just NES Pac-Man. Nothing else to say about it. It feels super fucking slow though. I don't know, man. It feels slower than it should be. And of course, I'm pretty sure the sound's not being emulated right. I could test Mario real fast if I have to. Or just hear coffee break. I think coffee break's normal. Yeah, that's wrong. There isn't much to say. It's just NES Pac-Man. You guys want to watch me kick ass at Super Mario Brothers? It's been a long time since I played the original Mario. I might be a little rusty. I haven't beat that game in a while. I know Is it just Mario? Okay, I'll take that. There's, like, ghosting artifacts. I don't know if I'll be able to beat this game. Yeah, the sound emulation's pretty off. There's like supersonic fucking sound waves in the sky. I don't know how well you can see that. Picture quality's so ass, the game can't even fucking handle it. Fuck. I knew I was gonna do that too. I felt it in my bones. Again, I don't even know if I'll be able to beat the game. I think I remember where the mushroom spots are in this level. So I should get those before I even enter World 8. I'm like overshooting my jumps and I need to fucking stop it. Fuck, that is not what I wanted to do, but I still did it pretty well. There we go. I'm fucking stupid. That's what I am. Alright, I'm not beating the game. I don't even know if there's any fucking mushrooms in this level. Fuck, I fucking hate Mario. That's it. That was all the Pac-Man games. Now, the title's kind of a lie, because I didn't actually play every Pac-Man, but I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars just to play every fucking version of Pac-Man. I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen. But I feel like it'd be fun to say which Pac-Mans do I think which Pac-Mans I personally recommend. So you know which ones to pick up if you really have that Pac-Man mood. So for modern systems, that would be Xbox One, PS4, PS5, modern PC, Switch, Switch 2. I would go with Pac-Man Museum Plus. That's probably your best bet when it comes to Pac-Man. The several options that you have for Pac-Mans, it's a really good collection. And when I say which ones for specific consoles, or specific companies, not consoles, I'm going to go like 360, Wii, and PS3 before. As modern, it's pretty easy since pretty much every game's the same across each platform. So, for Atari, I would personally go with the 5200 version of Pac-Man, as the 2600 version of Pac-Man fucking sucks. And the 52 version of Pac-Man has the cute little ghosts that I fucking love. I think they're adorable. So, go with that one. On Nintendo consoles, I would go with Namco Museum 50th Anniversary on GameCube, as it's the most bang for your buck. And, you know, there's so many other Pac-Mans for Nintendo consoles, but they're all mainly just like Namco museums. For Nintendo Portable, I would go with the Pac-Man collection for Game Boy Advanced. On PlayStation, I would go with Namco Museum for the PlayStation 1, just for the presentation alone, because it's awesome. PlayStation Portables, I didn't get to try out any Vita ones, but for the PSP, obviously Namco Museum Battle Collection, really good collection. For Xbox, it gets a little complicated. Original Xbox, 50th anniversary, obviously. 360 is where it gets complicated. If you have it, the Pac-Man Museum for 360 is really good, but if you don't have it, because it is a delisted title, I would just go with original Pac-Man. And Sega doesn't really have that many Pac-Mans, but Namco Museum on the Dreamcast is pretty decent. And plug and plays is difficult, but that Pac-Man one that I still don't know the name of, that one's probably the best one. And PC, it's called getting MAME and downloading a ROM of Pac-Man for arcade. It's pretty simple. So yeah, that's pretty much every Pac-Man that I recommend for each series of systems. I'm not going to do each console because most of the consoles only really had one version of Pac-Man, and where there is several different versions of Pac-Man, it's just like, which one do you want, Namco Museum or the Namco Museum with more fucking games on it? So yeah, that's the end of the Pac-Man videos. If I ever review Pac-Man again, it'll be its own separate video for that version of Pac-Man, and it actually has to be a distinct Pac-Man. It can't just be like, oh, fucking the arcade archive version of Pac-Man on the Switch is ever so slightly different to the fucking Xbox One version of Pac-Man.